What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Training Camp Takeaways. That sounds a lot better. That sounds pretty good. And today we have some takeaways from day 4 of Lions Training Camp. And let me just say, this is not your normal takeaways video. This one's a little bit special. So let's get it started.
Way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, and we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we're back with another one of these episodes, man. These episodes have been fun. They've been great. But today was even better because today's a little special. Today we were at Lions Training Camp. Me and DoseOfDion were there. DoseOfDion held it down, getting some clips. It was an awesome experience. We got to witness Dan Campbell and the Lions in person. And I got to say, a lot of things were different. Maybe that was because of season ticket members. But a lot of things were different. And you could feel the energy. You really could feel the energy. And we're going to talk all about that in a second. But before we get it started, I got to talk about how I got there. Shout out to my man, Coach Mike Jones. Coach Mike Jones, you are a legend. He hit me up. He had 2 extra tickets because he wasn't going to be able to make it. And he allowed me and DoseOfDion to go to this training camp because I don't have season tickets. And for the first and last day of training camp, you have to have season tickets. Thank you, Coach Mike Jones, man. You are a legend for this. I appreciate the experience. Was awesome. It was simply super cool, okay? Because we went to one in the past. You know, it was all right. It was solid. It's the Lions. But the way it was set up was kind of like, oh, this is kind of whack. It's kind of hard to see what's going on. But today was pretty darn awesome. All right, so shout out to you, Coach Mike Jones. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for letting us have that experience. You are a legend. And also, I want to give a shout out to the people that stopped me at Lions Training Camp and gave me a quick little what's up. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. That's always pretty darn cool when I get to see one of you guys and you're like, hey, you know, DoseOfDion. That's pretty awesome. I actually have a picture. I'm going to throw that right here. Y'all see that? That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So thank you. You guys are awesome. The support is amazing. And I'm glad we're in this ride together because this should be exciting. I'm telling you, after watching today, I'm whoa! Oh, you thought I was pumped before? Oh no, now I'm real pumped. Okay, so shout out to you guys if you're watching this video. How you doing? What did you think about training camp? Put it down in the comments below. You guys are legends. I appreciate it. Maybe we'll meet again. Maybe we will. Well, I'll be at more Lions things. I'm probably gonna go to a lot more of these training camp things. So maybe I'll see you again. So let's just dive right into these takeaways. And I did not take notes from anyone else reporting this. I just want to make sure these were all 100% my notes. That way I didn't get tangled up with reading something else and then all of a sudden it's not really my opinion anymore. That ain't good. All right, so I just want to give you guys what I saw from today's practice from my point of view, from my perspective. And next time I go, I should be able to take better notes. But I feel like we got some good notes that I wouldn't have got if I didn't go to today's training camp. Plus, we got some pretty darn cool clips to share as well. But I first want to talk about kind of the broad point of view because this is my first time seeing Dan Campbell in person. You know, he's the new head coach of the Lions. I wanted to see how things were structured. And the only thing I can compare it to is the last one that I went to, and that was when Matt Patricia was here. But there were some key differences. Yes, they were both training camp, but this was season ticket members only. This was the first one to the public. So those are 2 very big differences. But in terms of on the field, differences from the past, number one, probably the biggest one, is that, yes, there was music playing. I expected this because we saw clips of it, but yeah, music was playing throughout practice. It wasn't like crazy loud or anything. And maybe there were speakers across the field. I don't know because we were kind of blocked off the half. However, I know when Jamal Williams came to the speaker, that I was near the dude was dancing. Pretty much every time you looked at Jamal, he was dancing. So no one was lying there. Not a single person was lying when that is said. There's a chance the Lions past staff was a little bit worried about copyright. I don't know, possibly. I wouldn't say that this was more laid back because it does depend on what the team is planning to do going to that day. I mean, if I went to a different practice, maybe the one where Campbell's going out there and doing up downs, there could have been a completely different feel. Plus, there was no pads on during this practice. So I'm not exactly sure I would say this was more laid back. It was kind of just a situation, but there was a different energy towards it. And I would say you saw it specifically on certain players and coaches. Now, this isn't saying in the past we didn't have loud, we didn't have vocal players or vocal coaches, but there was kind of an energy about it. There was a lot of players that were pretty darn loud out there. They were dancing. They were having a good time. And then coaches. A couple of coaches specifically, which we'll get into, were pretty darn engaged. All right. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to see all the coaches up close, but there was a few, like Antoine Randall Ellis seemed very engaged. Mark DeLone showed some fire, and so did Aaron Glenn. Dan Campbell kind of just went from group to group, so he worked his way around the field. And I also love the fact that they did their drills in front of us. When Dan Campbell went to do the red zone drills, they did a couple away from us, but they went basically right in front of where all of us were, and they ran our drills. So that was pretty cool. Plus, like I said, they ended practice a little bit early, And at the end, they had all the players come over. We all cheered for him. You know, they gave out some balls and stuff. But it was a different feel. There's no question there was a different energy about it. So I want to call it more laid back, because if I go to another one, the situation could be a lot different. But in terms of where we were in this practice, because again, it's the weekend, you're not in pads, it's the first day open to the public, it's season ticket members only, so those could be very big factors. But there did seem to be just in general, just a different energy about this team. There was excitement. Players were getting super pumped. A lot of players, like, man, they were really engaged with each other. You saw all these handshakes. You don't know if I necessarily remember from the past. I don't want to even call this recency bias, because I remember the last one pretty well. I don't remember it maybe to the smallest detail, but I would say there was kind of a different energy, but also an energy that I kind of expected from what we've heard before I got to go. Now, I want to talk about what I saw on the field, specifically individually with some of these players. Who stood out to me, and maybe what players didn't necessarily stand out today. And like I said, we got some good clips, but I want to break it down into kind of positional groups. That's how I want to run this. Let's start with the offensive line. I don't got tons of notes here, but I would give credit to the offensive line. I really can't pinpoint a certain player and say he was great, because there were a lot of times where, based on the angle that I had, I couldn't really see the offensive lineman. And next time I'd probably try to get a better angle for that. But from what I could tell, when the quarterback was dropping back, when the defense would send pressure, of course there's no pads, but you can still get back to the quarterback. Rarely you saw a lot of pressure. There did seem to be a pretty good amount of holes open and lanes open to the running backs. Again, you can't tackle the players, but the offensive line seemed to hold it down. And we got to see Penny Sewell. He's out there wearing his sweatshirt. Big V is a giant. Okay, what the heck is that dude eating? That guy is, I know why they call him Big V. There's a difference between seeing this guy on an image and seeing him in person. The guy's afro makes him huge. He is a giant. You see Matt Nelson, the dude's like 6'10". You're just like, what the heck are they feeding these dudes? We got some giants. Then you see Drake Jackson. He just looks, kind of normal. So I was like, wow, that's weird. And, Drake Jackson's still a pretty big dude. So the offensive line is pretty jacked. But then Michael Brockers would shoot you. I'm just saying, I don't know. Maybe I'm just short, but I'm just saying, when you're out there, it's like, dang, these are some big dudes. The receiver position also. The receiver position, probably the corners as well. From what we've seen in the past, we've had a lot of shorter receivers. There's clearly some size at this receiver position. I mean, every single receiver that rolls out, it seems like they're 6'2" or above. Okay, we got some big size there. And then even the cornerbacks, Iffy stood out big time. Iffy really stood out with the group that he was going with. He was kind of low on the depth chart. It seemed like he was working against Ava Blau a lot of the time. But he stood out. He definitely stuck out when he was covering receiver, because he was just bigger than him. One note that I did have is I did see Terrell Crosby line up at different spots. I saw him at right guard once. Well, obviously we saw him at tackle. So Crosby was bouncing around. No lies there. He was moving around the offensive line. But I couldn't tell you much more specifically about how the offensive line performed, aside from I think they did a good job today. I think they did. Like the offensive line, the defensive line was sort of tough to individually see how players were performing. And there was no clear blow-bys, which is good for the offensive line. You don't want to see that. And like I said, as a whole, I thought the offensive line did well. Pass protection, opening up some run lanes. But defensively, it was sort of tough to get a good viewpoint. Same thing with the offensive line, because I was kind of on an angle. I was also at field level, so I wasn't able to look down on the players. So next time I go, I'm going to try to get a better view of that specifically. But I didn't get a great angle on how players were doing individually. However, I do have a few notes with the defensive line as well. First off, let's start with the rookie Levi. We've been hearing that Levi, he's way down in the depth chart, right? He's way down depth chart. And I got no issues with that, having to work his way up. A lot of rookies have been for the Lions so far. But I will say that specifically today, maybe this was the first day, maybe he's working his way slowly up the depth chart, but he did get some reps with some of our top defensive linemen. There was one rep I remember individually where Lee McNeil was at nose tackle, who is our top nose tackle. And at defensive end, they had Deshaun Hand and Levi. All right, so he is getting some reps with some of our top defensive linemen. Now, that means that there was no Nick Williams or Brockers on the field. So it doesn't necessarily mean he was starting. But he is getting some of the higher reps. So I thought that was just an important note, that if you're wondering how that's going, it seems like maybe he's slowly working his way up, which is kind of expected. But I do like that he's having to earn that. Now, also as a note with the outside linebacker position, because I feel like I could throw this in the defensive line, especially if we're talking about base sets, because that's what I'm talking about specifically here. We know that the Lions are going to be asking these outside linebackers, your Trey Flowers, your Romeo, who are now moving to this new two-point stance, to drop into coverage. And it was evident today that that's what they're doing. They asked Trey Flowers to drop into coverage. They asked Romeo to drop into coverage. Probably one of his toughest reps in the flat. Kind of became like man coverage on DeAndre Swift, about 5 yards out. Now that was tough because DeAndre Swift put on a beautiful route. Oh, it was crispy. Okay, I'll tell you, it was crispy. And Romeo was unable to keep up. So obviously not an easy matchup, but they will ask their guys to do that. Now, one of them shocked me, and they asked Julian Okwara, again in the base set here, because sub packages, everything changes. And they based that they had Julian Okwara lined up across from the slot. Now, they didn't ask him to go cover that slot. However, he did play the flat in that area off the snap. So I was like, oh, snap, he's lined up really wide right now. And that's how they had him go. Now, Julian Okwara has a little bit more athleticism, so maybe they can ask him to venture out a little further. We've seen Julian Okwara in the past have interceptions dropping into coverage. So that one, I like that fit a lot. Romeo, maybe they're a little bit more comfortable with. I didn't see Trey drop very deep into coverage. Romeo seemed a little bit deeper, and then Julian was just way out there. I took note that the outside linebacker opposite of Julian Okwara with the second team was Robert McCray, but I'm not completely sure that's true. It could have been Charles Harris. It's 52 and 53. I'm not completely sure. I wish I could remember better. I don't really know. I wrote down McCray, not the number. I'm mad at myself for doing that because those two could easily be confused since they're playing basically the same spot. So I'm not sure who the other outside linebacker was. I wrote McCray, but I feel like it's probably Charles Harris. And that's a big deal because, of course, there's no Austin Bryant. You have the Reggie Gilberts. Because this was probably the biggest surprise to me. I was not expecting this heading into the day at all. Dan Campbell told us the two positions he's looking at individually. Inside linebackers and safeties. And I got to give some credits today to these linebackers. Oh, snap. Did they kind of like, what I said, knock my socks off? I was like, what the heck? These linebackers played really well. Individually, one guy that I mistakenly said was Derek Barnes while we were there, and I feel really dumb because it was clearly not Derek Barnes. It was DoseOfDion Hamilton. Oh, snap. Hold up. Wait a minute. I might have to redo my 53-man roster projection. I know it's one day. But DoseOfDion Hamilton, in pass coverage, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good. Now, it's tough. I need a better angle. I need to see him in run defense. I need to see him with pads on, hitting people, right? That's a very big part. And he's kind of known as a pass coverage linebacker from his time with Washington. But, man, did he look good today. He had specifically, I remember, two passes broken up. He may have had more. The one he had broken up was a short little over the middle, slightly to the left side of the field. It looked like it was intended for a running back, and he knocked it away not very far off the line of scrimmage. And then later, probably maybe the play of the day, and Mark DeLone lost it, man. I loved it. I wasn't ready. I wasn't expecting that with DeLone. This dude ran onto the field, and so I was talking about the energy's different. Ran onto the field, and he was pumped. The entire defense got pumped every time the defense made a play. Did I say that? Anytime PBU, anything the defense did, the entire defense, the entire wall of defenders lost it. That was awesome, okay? There is a chemistry within this entire team. And it did seem like they were kind of going back and forth a little bit. Like there was a battle. When the offense made a play, the offense was hype. When the defense made a play, the entire defense was hype. And DoseOfDion Hamilton made a beautiful play. And why it was so great is because it was against T.J. Hockenson. That's a tough ask for any linebacker, is to go mano-a-mano with T.J. Hockenson, and boy, did he do that. Excited because Hockenson made a great catch here, but it was out of bounds. And Mark DeLone lost it, and I was like, whoa. As soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa, that was great coverage. Was that really a linebacker? He stuck with Hockenson. Hockenson ran like a fade route to the corner. First off, the fact that he's guarding Hockenson means that he's getting some pretty good reps. All right, that's pretty high on the depth chart reps. And no Jalen Rabin, these are opportunities that you get. And wow, when you're talking about no pads, it's going to be a lot about pass coverage because you can't actually hit people. This was pretty. And we've heard good things up to today. Great positioning, tip the ball, corner of the end zone to T.J. Hockenson. I mean, this is a really tough ask to not only be in position, but also then make a play on the football for a linebacker. And he tips it up. Now, Hockenson, credit to him, kept focus, made a catch off the tip, but he was out of bounds. You watch his feet. He only had 1 foot in. He was out of bounds on that play. That's what everybody was saying, out of bounds. But, man, that coverage by DeAndre Hamilton was pretty saucy. And then, like I said, he came back with another PBU a little bit later. So, DeAndre Hamilton surprised me. But really, the entire linebacker group, in terms of pass coverage, they made some plays today. Alex Anzalone, we expected him in coverage. We expect that to be something that improves. He looked pretty good in coverage. He also had a pass broken up today. Jimmy Collins was the starting Will. Alex Anzalone was the starting Mike. It's something that we expected, but Alex has a lot more energy than I thought. I didn't know he was like that. I mean, he was flying around. I think it's a product of their environment. A lot of guys that we didn't really see as vocal, everybody was engaged. Everybody was happy. Everybody was dancing. I mean, there was some kind of pep about this practice, at least this one individually. I don't know. People have told us, but I saw it firsthand. And guys like Alex, like the guys that we were hoping would be leaders, who's going to be a leader of the linebacker group? It seemed like it was Alex. Who is going to be a leader of the defense line? It's Brockers. He gets the attention of everybody. Okudah has taken that leadership role of the cornerback unit. Offensive line, I don't really know today, but I can tell you they did well. They did well, and Sewell did not look like he was cracking under any kind of pressure. And when pads come on, it's going to be a different ball game, so we'll see how he responds then. Line, offensive line, defense line was tough because they go 7-on-7s. There is no offensive line, defense line, so it's tough. It's more about the skill positions, but they'll be fun to see when pads come on. Jamie Collins didn't have a pass broken up from what I can remember, but he did seem to be in pretty good position. Now, after the catch, with guys like Swift, he struggled a little bit. They were able to shake him, but before the catch, he was dropping a little bit into coverage, man to man. They were giving him some responsibilities. Now, he said he's been rushing a lot more from that will position, so I expect that coming into the year. But those Mike linebackers, DoseOfDion Hamilton, Alex Anzalone, but DoseOfDion Hamilton specifically, I was like, oh snap, this dude can actually, he was really covered. And even Derek Barnes didn't look bad here either. So coverage from the linebackers, got to give a clap. And Mark DeLone, when he came off the sideline, like, hype. I mean, he came up hype with that energy. I was like, ooh, I wasn't expecting that. So that was just a great moment. I would call it the play of the day. I saw a lot of good plays today, but that one to me, that one stuck out. Plus this clip, I don't know how DoseOfDion got this. Credit to him. Let's move back a little bit further. Let's talk about the secondary. Because as a whole, really, I was impressed with the linebackers back for the defense. That's where I think they made some money today, and that's what they're supposed to do when you're talking about no pads. They're going to be passing a lot. And this secondary, they were a little bit stingy. And it really came to me when Aaron Glenn came onto the field. Wasn't expecting this either. Aaron Glenn, haven't really heard about him a ton, but he kind of walked onto the field after a couple touchdowns were given up, and we'll get to the offense in a second, because the defense was a little bit like this. They were bending a little bit. And remember, they were playing a lot from red zone situations. So it's 20-yard line, 15, 10, 5. And in that area, specifically from the 20 and the 15, 10, wherever it was, the running backs were getting some touchdowns. Like, they were racking it up a little bit. They had some consistency going. And Aaron Glenn came out there, and he said something. I don't know what he said, but it seemed after that he lit some kind of fuse in this defense. He sparked some life into him because they were making plays. And there were a couple of notes. First off, in coverage, in the secondary individually, split coverage, they were in pretty much the majority of the time. That's what we saw today. The cornerbacks, they were very aggressive. A couple guys individually, I would say Jerry Jacobs, he showed that he was willing to try to press at the line of scrimmage. Jeff Okudah was pretty aggressive. A.J. Parker, but also Will Harris. Yeah, Will Harris was getting after it defensively. When he was asked to go man-to-man coverage against Darren Fells, this dude got up and he was physical at the line. And that's probably what he felt was his best bet. But then in the back end, flying around, I mean, these safeties, they're ball watching. And that's what they're able to do in a split safety coverage. It usually leads to more turnovers. And we saw that, okay, this is how this defense can be opportunistic. Because while they didn't come up with a pick today, they seemingly forced a lot of things underneath, and they were flying around the field in the secondary. That was fun to see. That was like, you could tell that this defense has potential to get a lot more interceptions in the back end than it did in the past. Because even if their pass rush wasn't crazy good and, the quarterback was under pressure, they were still able to fly around the field and force some incomplete passes, get some PBUs. There was one play where they full speed ran into each other. And I can't remember who exactly it was. He got up slow. We're glad he was okay. But yeah, they were flying around defensively. So it was nice to see that secondary going at it. Jerry Jacobs had arguably the play of the day. I'll give it to DoseOfDion Hamilton. Jerry Jacobs, I put it in the community. Yes, he did have an interception. Zone dropped. It almost seemed like maybe it was an option route because the quarterback and receiver maybe were a little off here. DoseOfDion said the same thing that I kind of saw. It was a short route. It was kind of like a curl route ran by the receiver, very short. And Jerry Jacobs kind of sat behind it and Boyle threw way deeper than that pass. So maybe it was an option route that they were kind of off on. Maybe they just were on a different page, the quarterback and the receiver here. Again, this is Tim Boyle throwing. And Jerry Jacobs kind of just sat right under that thing and picked it off. And when you talk about the defense losing it, the defense took off. I mean, guys started chasing him. I was trying to get a picture of it. Guys were chasing him around. It was pretty hype. Jerry Jacobs had an interception. I don't think we've heard an interception up to this point. So that was pretty cool, especially because Jacobs, someone we're trying to have on the show. Seeing that, I was like, that's awesome. That is awesome. And I even said it a couple plays before. I'm like, I want to see Jerry Jacobs get a pick just because why not? Michael Ford was the top nickel today when the Lions went to those sub packages. So we've heard that in the past. That continued again today, rocking the number 2. But also, Jeff Okudah. Now, we've heard Okudah's off to this hot start. And again, to see him in person, he kept it going. He didn't have a pick. I wouldn't even say he had a pass breakup today. But he did have a couple of coverage snaps where they were all incomplete. Nothing, I don't remember really a pass converted thrown his way. Maybe something underneath in his zone. And by the way, the secondary mixed in a lot of zone looks. They really mixed it well. But when I talk about Jeff Okudah, we've talked about him being a leader. Jeff Okudah is a different guy than I remember. Jeff Okudah is loud. He was talking to a lot of different guys. He was spending time around a lot of the young guys. Just talking to a lot of, I know he's young, but he looked different today. There was one play which I had to mark down for effort, and we heard about it yesterday. He kind of ran down Khalif Raymond, and they gave him some claps for effort. Same thing today. And it may have been like a joking, but Jeff Okudah ran this dude down. Swift broke a play, and I wouldn't say he broke the run because I couldn't tell they were on the other side of the field. But Swift, they ran. Every time they run, they can be technically tackled, wrapped up, but then they keep running. They finish the play. There was one where he kind of broke out and started running to finish the play, and Jeff Okudah started gaining on him. I mean, Jeff Okudah ran this dude down and basically caught up to him from behind. Now, Swift is fast. Not the fastest, and I wouldn't say that Swift maybe was running at 100 miles per hour, but Jeff Okudah ran him down. So I was like, okay, you could see some speed there. And we saw there was one pass, deep bomb they took early, a deep shot from probably the 30, 35 yard line to Tyrell Williams early. Pass was slightly overthrown, I guess you could say. But Jeff Okudah was right in his hip, played him down the field, playing the top receiver offensively. They didn't seem to target him a ton. Another time they went to a fade route to Tyrell Williams in the end zone. Nothing there. Basically just kind of like a throwaway out of bounds for Jared Goff. So Jeff Okudah, not only do you see him as a leader, you see him vocal. He's over there with Tracy Walker. Him and Will Harris were all over doing handshakes. Just all in like a group, like a little triangle doing handshakes. And I was like, okay, this is cool. So they really do have handshakes with different guys here. Jeff Okudah is taking on and embracing some of that leadership role, and he looks a lot faster on the field. Looks healthy. It's awesome to see he looks healthy, and I'm hoping for a breakout year, or a bounce back year, I should say, for Hefe, and so far, so good. Also, A.J. Parker was the guy that caught my eye a little bit. Now, A.J. Parker, you could say he was beat here by Sage Surratt, and we do have the clip of it, but Sage Surratt got some nice inside position. The pass was a little bit high, and it fell incomplete, but then there was another play where he had a pass breakup. I wrote his number down a few times. A few times today I took note of his number, and that's because A.J. Parker made a few plays. I actually forgot his number, so I wasn't sure who I was actually taking note of at the time. But yeah, Parker made a few plays. So secondary, there were some bright spots in the secondary. They made some plays. Now, did they get beat? Yes, and that was specifically early. Really, where they seemed vulnerable was over the middle, and I know we've been hearing that, but man, the slots, they were on it today. But for them, yes, they gave up some plays, as every secondary would. They gave up some corner routes to Hawk, but they looked pretty good, and they forced a lot of things underneath. And after getting beat a few times early, and Aaron Glenn kind of came out there and said something to him, they locked in, and it seemed like a different unit. So it was pretty cool to see the secondary step up. Who is stepping up as a leader in that defense in the back end? Will Harris made some nice things today because he was super aggressive. You could not slow down Will Harris. So the secondary as a whole was just physical and aggressive. That's how I would describe it. But the cornerbacks really, they were not afraid to bump, press at the line of scrimmage, depending on what defense they threw out there. And I do like that. When you think about the corners we brought in guys that could be physical, from Dunbar to, heck, even Jerry Jacobs, and they're willing to do it. Will Harris is physical. They get on the line, and they're going to fight you off that line. And it slows down the play. It slows down the routes. It's just another way that Aubrey Pleasant can hopefully make things cloudy, and you have the personnel to do it. So I like that they're playing to that strength. Now, I want to take a quick transition here to the special teams, and when you talk about the kicking battle, pretty obvious today because, you just see who makes what kicks. They didn't go very far. The furthest I think they went is from the 30-yard line, of scrimmage, and then the kicker would kick from about the 35. But just from the notes alone, Randy Bullock made all of his kicks. He looked good. Before he started backing up, every kick seemed to be like at the top of the uprights. He was like, wow, he's kind of bopping that thing. And then when you look at Matthew Wright, he started off good, and he did have one missed kick, so that's good. It doesn't sound bad because he only missed one kick, and it looked like he had more reps than Randy Bullock. But as he moved back, things started to get a little ugly. Yes, it's early. He's going to have rust just like quarterbacks, so yes, that's very fair. But Randy Bullock won the day today. Also had probably the longest kickoff of the day. Now, that's not to say that they were trying to kick it the furthest, but if they were, he had what basically could have been a touchback. He was the only guy to do that. So, yeah, Bullock definitely took the day. Matthew Wright, as he backed up, he still made him, so I guess as long as you make it. But they started going sideways, and they were very short. They weren't getting in by a lot, and then he had one wide left like he did yesterday. So I would definitely give the nod to Randy Bullock today. But remember, it's still rust. It's still early, but he won today. As returners, they did kick returns today, and you could see it that Tom Kennedy, Victor Bolden, Khalif Raymond, they look very comfortable. They had Godwin mixed in. Unfortunately, Godwin had a couple of rough steps today. He had a muffed kickoff. It wasn't anything serious. It wasn't like the defense got on it, but he did drop it. And then we saw later him drop a pass. But you do respect the fact that he realized that. And after practice, he's out there on the jugs working on his hands. He knows he has to be better there. So that's what he's working on. I respect that. He understands that. He's trying to train his positions. And kickoffs are tough to catch. So I respect anyone trying to do that because it's tough. I mean, you see it and it looks easy, but when you watch guys trying to catch punts, like you try to go catch a punt. I mean, it's tough and people aren't even kicking that eye and I struggle with it. You're trying to track it, go down and catch it. And when you're flying across the field catching a kickoff, it looks tough. Let's start off with the quarterback position. And when you look at the quarterbacks, I have a couple of notes for each of these guys. First off, David Blau, all of them gave him a design run. It seemed like they were utilized a little bit different. They did kind of go to what the quarterback did well, like Jared Goff, Tim Boyle, they didn't get design runs. There was one where, they did take off a few times, but David Blau had a design run where he got it and he took off to the right side. So that was nice to see them try to utilize them to their strengths. David Blau, for whatever reason, maybe it's the weapons or the offensive line, he did seem to hold the ball a little bit longer than the other guys. He seemed a little bit more hesitant passing the football. I think there was one time he would have actually got sacked, and that's credit to Julian Okwara. If I would say a guy that got pressure today that had a win, it looked like Julian Okwara beat his tackle. Now, the play didn't end because he just took off and started running, and you can't tackle him, but he looked a little bit more hesitant with the ball. Tim Boyle was much more decisive. Now, that did lead to a pick. So, take it however you want to. But he is more decisive. Boyle seems to have the biggest arm. He definitely can fling that thing. All right, he can fit into small windows. He's very confident in what he can do. And that's also maybe why he led to a pick today. But he will attack the field, that's for sure. Not to say that every pass he throws is great, but he will attack. He's pretty decisive, and he's much more quick to make a decision with the ball in his hands. Jared Goff, the things that I wanted to see, I think we saw today. I think we did. I mean, he did some of the things that he saw with LA. For example, before the snap, a lot of times to LA, a lot of snap counts. And, that's what a lot of quarterbacks do. But he does that to set up protection. And you could see it. Snap count, he checked to see if anybody was showing blitz. And then he pointed out. Actually, Swift was helping him too. He was pointed out with him. So you saw that he brought back. You also saw some motion. So he was doing some things pre-snap that he did back with LA, which makes me believe that that was something that he was doing back at LA too. It wasn't just McVay's running this. So I think he's utilizing some of that. Some of that was pre-play design. But Jared Goff did seem to have a pretty good control. He seemed to be the most comfortable quarterback out there on the field, moving things around, looking one way, going back to another. He was very comfortable in the pocket. Now, not all of his passes were crisp. He did have a couple overthrows as practice went on, trying to take some shots. And early, again, it's early, so you're warming up. He did have some ducks. Hey, but that happens. It's early, right? You're going to have that. So I wouldn't say he has a monster arm or anything like that. Very willing to take his checkdowns. Actually, a lot of his plays came from checkdowns, but they did implement a lot of things. Rollouts, they like to implement some rollouts for him. They got him outside the pocket. He throws well on the run. He seems very accurate on the run. He was money today when he was moving around. He did take some shots when he felt like he had matchups, so that was something that the Lions utilized, and I'm sure they'll utilize it during the season. Definitely hard to take a lot of shots when you're inside the 20. It's hard to push the ball down the field. So a lot of, the field has definitely shrunk. So I'd like to see them in different scenarios next time I go to training camp. That would be awesome. Maybe I see him on third down. Maybe I see him on first downs. Whatever they're trying to do. But he was very willing to say, hey, running backs are my friend. It was actually a quote from him, running backs are my friend. And he did that. The dump down is my friend. He'll attack there. And a lot of his success came over the middle of the field, as we've seen in the past. So I wouldn't say there's anything crazy here, but he did seem to have the most control, and he was very comfortable with this offense, which was nice to see this early in training camp before we're even getting pads. Now, we'll see when the pass rush is coming at him with pads, how that changes, and how the run can set up these pass plays. The three spots that he attacked the most. I first off got to give credit to the running backs. We've heard good things about them in the passing game. It's tough because the running game, because again, he can't be tackled. They did seem to look pretty explosive. And also, I love the chemistry between Jamal and Swift. There was a clear chemistry between those guys. They're joking around. They're over there talking. So it's a little bit quieter. Jamal, he's loud. He's very loud. He's that character that you see in interviews. He's that dude. He's interacting with the fan, actually right in front of us. He was interacting with the crowd. He's dancing all the time. So there's some nice chemistry there. And then Deuce Staley compliments it well. From Dedrick Mills to Michael Warren to Jamar Jefferson, and of course DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, the running backs today kind of stole the show in the passing game. And I would give that some credit to the secondary because they forced some underneath passes, but also to the fact that it's red zone situation. So when you're spreading out a defense and you got 20 yards and closer, it's tough to take a lot of shots. When they were backed up, they took more shots. When they got closer, it was tough. So it made Brashad Perriman, specifically, he was kind of quiet today because it was tough to take shots, and that's really where he's at his best, is down the field. It's tough. He's not a huge red zone target. That was more for Jared Goff. He was looking to his running backs. He was looking to his tight ends and the inside of the field, and sometimes Tyrell if he felt like he had a matchup there. But the running backs, they were good. DeAndre Swift is smooth. Oh, he's tough. He's going to be a handful for anybody that tries to cover him because unless they're putting a cornerback on him, it's gonna be a long day. It's tough to cover that dude. Just watching him go through drills, very smooth and out of breaks. He can stop on a dime, cut in and out. The zig routes are just disgusting. They are killers, and he has really good hands. So Swift is a problem. Jamal, I didn't see him as involved today in the passing game, but you could tell that he's going to be. Jamar Jefferson even made some nice plays. Dedrick Mills got involved. Michael Warren got involved. So the running backs were big today in terms of pass catching. Jamar had a touchdown on a little out kind of zig route as well, just like Swift did. And knowing the defense, how they're going to drop outside linebackers, the Lions attacked that. And they went to the running backs, and the running backs showed up. They made some good grabs today. Slot receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown is legit. He's legit. After practice, a lot of guys were getting extra work, so I couldn't even say everybody. A lot of guys were, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is definitely legit from slot. Very fearless. Now, when pads come on, that may change a little bit. We'll see. But even back in college, he was fearless to attack the middle of the field, and we saw it today. Fearless receiver. The guy will attack the middle of the field. He's got good hands. He catches everything with his hands. He doesn't catch like this. He catches everything with his hands, which is cool. That's nice to see. You see it on the film, but then when you see it in person, it's like, yeah, even going through drills, he catches everything. He's worried about where his feet are. He's not just grabbing it, right? He's worried about his feet. He's very technically sound. He worries about the small details, but he's a good route runner. He was tough over the middle. He gave some fits to this defense, and even after the catch, you saw some of his make you miss ability on our linebackers. They couldn't tackle him, but he was kind of shifty once the ball was in his hands. But he attacked the middle constantly, and Goff looked to him a ton. I expect him to get a lot of receptions this year. He seems like the go-to slot right now. Khalif mixed in when Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't at slot. But when he was slot, if Khalif was on the field, he was outside. And that a couple guys that stood out. Like I said, Tyrell was his top outside receiver that he went to, specifically today, probably because it was red zone. Rashad didn't get a lot of looks. I think it was just because of the play. So I have to see how he does in other drills when they're closer. Khalif Raymond also played well today. Khalif Raymond had a nice bomb that he caught early. Khalif's going to make the team. I think Khalif makes the team. From what I've seen, what I've heard, he's going to make the team. He just brings too much in special teams and on the offense. Ross St. Brown's nice. Plus, they got him involved on the end around to let him do things after the play. So it was nice to see that. Then mix it up a little bit with him. Khalif Raymond had a good day. He's going to make the team. I would tell you right now, he's going to make the team. If you're wondering, he's going to. I just believe it. I'll say it right now. Too much on special teams, and offensively, they like to go to him. He had a nice shot deep because early in practice, they would take a couple reps from like the 35, and he had a nice shot. I didn't get a great view of who was covering him. We didn't get a clip of it, but the crowd did cheer when he made that catch. Mixed in, slot, and outside. He did have one where he slipped and fell, but he is kind of shifty. He's a nice route runner, and he catches well. So, Khalif Raymond looked pretty good. He stood out a little bit today. Sage Surratt was utilized in the slot. The Lions, when they put some of these guys in the slot, they did it for simply side advantage. They did it with Sage. They did it with Geronimo. Neither of them were successful. Sage just passed a little too high. Geronimo had a PBU by A.J. Parker, I believe it was. I'm not exactly sure there, but there was a pass breakup. But when they used Dallas in the slot, because we know he's much better on the outside, they used it to his side. Kennedy had this drop in warm-ups, but you know what? This is why DoseOfDion had to record. Because as soon as I start recording one clip, Kennedy drops a pass. And I'm like, dang, I'm just bad luck. I just got to stop. So I just stopped. I'm done. I'm done after that. To see what the defensive backs were doing in practice. But it looked like they were working on switching off, passing off offensive players. And one thing that I did note about Aubrey Pleasant is he seemed much more as a teacher than necessarily just a coach. He wasn't just going through reps. He was very hands-on. Held guys to talk with him, even passed when other groups were switching around. Just running through drills with them to try to help them understand things. Very hands-on as a coach. All right, he was one of those guys who was very more, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do it rather than have you go through reps. I like that. So that's the kind of coach that he was today. That was his style today, and I liked it. It was tough to see what they were doing over there. I think they were working on passing off routes and man-to-man coverage. I can't completely tell, but I can tell you that he was a very hands-on leader for the secondary, specifically with the corners, that he was just kind of teaching them through everything, trying to walk them through the process. So it was less reps, more walk through, while the other drills were just kind of rolling through reps. He was trying to walk through everything. And for the receivers, DoseOfDion pointed out a cool drill. They had them, catching passes through basically dummies. So it was like coming through holes of the defense, so having to be able to react like that. So that was pretty cool, especially if you're going to tackle the middle so much. You got to be able to do that. And obviously, you have to be ready to take a hit, right? That's a very big part as well. Tight end position, Hawk was the dude. It was simple as that. Hawk was that guy. And he got involved a couple of times. They took shots to him a lot. He took shots when he was covered. They got him on some corner routes, to the sideline. Hawk's in very good shape. He looks good. He also threw some, signature structured balls near us, so that was pretty cool. But Hawk looks like he's in really good shape, and Hawk's the top tight end. It's not even close. Like, I feel like there's a gap between him and whoever else. Hausman had a drop today, which, you know, you hate to see guys drop passes over the middle. He smacked the ground. He knew it, right? He knew it was an opportunity. He smacked the ground. They didn't get tons of opportunities, but Hawk did. When you talk about guys getting opportunities for tight end, it was Hawk, and then everybody else would every once in a while get some passes. Kabinda had a pass today thrown his way, and he caught it. You talk about leaders, like I said, Okudah was a vocal leader. It was clear. The coaches, very engaging. Antoine Randall L, what I saw, Mark D. Lone was super engaging. Got to give a lot of props to him. I pretty much underrated what he would bring to the table, okay? And he is a very, very good coach from what I saw. And Aubrey Pleasant as well, we already know what he brings, but they were very vocal. Dan Campbell kind of just went from drill to drill, did what he did. He's managing the team. He's like, this is my team. So he went from drill to drill, checked in on things, watched the kicking battle, watched them go 7-on-7. He would also give some pointers here and there to certain guys. He was dapping guys up, you know, kind of talking to them, getting very engaged, right in their ear. And he was just, you know, I don't know what he was talking to him about, but he was very engaging, but he just worked around from different drills. But certain players, man, Okudah, Michael Brockers, these leaders that we've heard about and we expect, they are leaders. Brockers is a leader. He gets the attention of every defensive lineman when he talks. Every time he talks, guys are around him all the time. Whether he's dancing, he's talking to him, he gets the attention. Not only because he's the biggest dude, he just gets attention. Okudah gets a lot of love. He's very engaged. But that chemistry, I mean, they're trying to build like a young no-fly zone because there is chemistry between everybody. I mean, I would say they're just all talking to each other. There's a lot of love there. And anytime anybody makes any kind of play, they're all hyped up together. I mean, that is a very tight group, and you don't want to break that up. Like what I saw after practice, a lot of guys working after practice. They did some sprints. They caught on some passes. Sage Surratt stuck out to me because even though he didn't get very involved, he was out there running routes. He picked the DB. I think it was Mike Ford, but I couldn't really tell. But they were just running routes. He was working on getting separation. So I did like to see that. I was like, okay, he's doing his own little thing over there. Small little note here that I picked up on, but when the players went to go stretch out, they all had individual lines, right, for their positional group. Goff stretched out in the offensive line. Now, I know that's not like anything important, but I think it tells you the kind of chemistry maybe that he's building with his offensive line, how close they're getting. He was in the line doing it with them. So I thought that was a little note. You had Boyle and you had, Blau doing it in their own line, but then you had Goff over there in the offensive line, doing it with them as well. It's those subtle things that could make a very big difference. But, yeah, I mean, overall, it was an awesome experience. These guys were cool. The way they had it set up was awesome. It was a different energy. It was a different energy from what you may have seen in the past. So if you weren't there, trust me when I say there's a different energy. And there probably will be even more of a different energy when they start going pads. But today was cool. It was really cool. I mean, he had all the players come over. They all stood there. We cheered. They had a Lions roar play. But there was energy, and everybody's smiling. Every time I look at players, they're dancing, they're smiling. No one had their head down. Guys were picking each other up. There was life in this practice. And even DoseOfDion brought up, there was a little bit of a different feel to this. Maybe because it was season ticket members, but trust me, on the field, there's a lot of life within this team. So it was an awesome experience. Hopefully those takeaways are something that, maybe you haven't heard elsewhere. And trust me, I'm going to do better with getting more. Shout out to Coach Mike Jones. You are an absolute legend. I appreciate you. Shout out to the people that said what's up at practice. You guys are the reason that this is so fun to do. You guys make this thing awesome. So I just got to give a credit and shout out to you guys. You guys are cool. If you ever notice me, say, hey, what's up? I love meeting y'all. It's really cool to meet you because I don't know what y'all look like, but you see me. So if you see me, be like, what's good? Be like, what's good? Just take a shot. If it's not me, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I gave you that information, but just try and say what's good because, I like interacting with you guys. It was really cool. You guys know who you are if you're watching this. So shout out to you guys. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. I'm pumped for this season. I'm even more pumped after going to this. Thank you, Brian, for watching, and I'm out.